So Amardeep is the director of LAANE's Fair Workweek Los Angeles campaign, and she was the lead organizer for SEIU, which is the Service Workers International Union United Service, and she was also working with the United Service Workers West Airport Workers United campaign at LAX. So she's had a lot of things on her plate, but right now her focus is as director of LAANE's Fair Workweek Los Angeles campaign. She has spoken to us in the past on different campaigns. Actually, that was the port campaign, and she will be speaking today on 3 different campaigns that LAANE is doing. Joining her after she speaks will be Rachel Torres of Unite Here Local 11. And so I'll introduce her when she talks, but she has been working with Amardeep on the CVS Workers contract and to try to get the essential workers extra pay. So, but we'll first start with Amardeep.
Sure, thank you. And it's great to be back with this club in a different format, being virtual format. And so first, I'm going to talk to you about the Our People, Our Port campaign. And I think Grecia Reyes, who took over my position on the ports, has been in touch with the Dem Club. So I have a couple of legislative updates. And Grecia also, on behalf of our ports team, wanted to extend her thank you to the club for your endorsement and support of the different legislative pieces. So also, and do I need to just ground folks in the ports campaign, or you all have been pretty familiar?
I think it would be helpful if you just give we've talked about it in the past, but it would be good if you just gave a few lines about it.
Okay, so cool. I will do that. So Our People, Our Port campaign, this is one of our LAANE's longest running campaigns. It's been around 13 years. In the late 2000s, it was a clean and safe port, which brought labor, environmental justice, and community groups together to put in, the standards that we have both at the Port of LA and Long Beach in terms of, mitigating air pollution, as well as some worker rights issues in terms of truck drivers being misclassified by port companies, even though they are employees. They work for the companies. The companies control every single aspect of their scheduling. And with the ports, together with the LAANE team, we've actually been really successful here in California with the labor commissioner helping file lawsuits where at the end, these truck drivers are found to be indeed employers, of these companies. And again, where our long-term goal is to change this so that all port truck drivers, they are employees and they should be counted as that. Right now, we're doing individual companies and individuals base by base. And we have some federal hurdles that we have to clear out of the way. So just want to lay that groundwork. And as part of what we have been doing with the ports campaign is really figuring out ways, how do we use our local power here? What can the city of LA and Long Beach do, as well as both of the airports have commissions, but also what could our state legislative bodies can do? So I believe there were 3 bills that you all supported. One was SB 338, which was introduced by Senator Lina Gonzalez, and that helped strengthen existing law while I was on the campaign to list trucking companies who misclassify their employees and also who owe back wages to them. And so this just strengthened that list, which the labor commissioner actually posts. They update each month. The other, and that passed. So thank you for your support. It's on the governor's desk. The other bill that was introduced, I believe, AB 794, which was introduced by Assemblymember Wendy Carreo, and that directs a California Air Resource Board, CARB, to develop workforce standards that trucking companies must meet if they want to get any incentives for buying a clean truck. So as you know, state of California, we have goals to reduce emissions and to reach zero emissions. So how do we tie those incentives? If you're getting taxpayer dollar, you have to make sure that you are not breaking the law by classifying your employees. So that also passed. And then lastly, it was SB 700. That was championed by Senator Maria Elena DeRosso, which also minimized the incentives to misclassify drivers by making sure that trucking companies actually pay payroll taxes for the drivers for unemployment insurance. Right now drivers are on the hook for that, and we're also losing out in payroll taxes as well. So that bill, so the Ports Campaign, what they decided is to hold off on that bill because the labor commissioner actually has listened to the concerns that were raised by port truck drivers, and they're going to try to resolve that administratively. So what that means is, given this pandemic, when a driver, didn't have work, when they went to apply for unemployment insurance, they had to jump through several hoops, which we were able to help. So now we're also getting the EDD to focus on fixing that issue. And so I'm sure Gracia, when she comes again, she'll let you know what the next steps is. So far, they're going to let EDD and working the labor commissioner kind of figure that out. And so, thank you all for making sure that we get SB 794 and 338 through. The governor has until October 10th to sign them into law. And this, we hope he does that. We hope that he does that. And this is going to make a huge impact on these truck drivers. So thank you again to all of your support. This is what I have on the update for Gracia. And then if you all have any questions, I can relay them to Gracia. And Anne, if you could, collect the questions and you could email them to me, that would be great. So I'm going to pause there.
There was one question that came up, where we have the backup of the ships lining up at the port. They wanted to know if that had to do with record volume. Is it because of labor shortage or because of COVID?
So with this, given that I'm not on the campaign, but so so there's a couple of issues at hand, which I don't have more of the information. I think it's also due to the pandemic. There's quite like a backlog of things coming in, and there's also so there's a number of things that are happening, and also I think immediately where the product is made and shipped, there's some issues there at the terminals, but I think Gracia would be better to address it. So so there's a lot of backlogs that the pandemic just created as well, but I think Gracia will know the roots of it. So I can share this with her.
Yeah. I it's been in the paper as well. And I know some people who work at the ports and they haven't seen a labor shortage. And they just said it has to do in terms of the pandemic, just that there's just so much being shipped right now late. So. Yeah. Thank you. So you want us to share do you want us to share your slides now or?
Yes, please. And I want to, so share the slides. So one thing do want to share. So in terms of when we're talking about the CVS contract bite, our coalition, which is Fair Workweek LA, and then also what Rachel's going to talk about as well with the America Rescue Plan, all those are centered in this one coalition. And so this is all part of our one campaign. So I'll start. Thank you. And so again, it's retail and grocery campaign, and UFCW 770 is our core partner on this. And LAANE, we've partnered with UFCW 770, I think over a decade now. And so I just want to set that context up. All of these are all in one campaign. And if you could, I just want to give kind of just a grounding of the coalition and what the purpose, how it came about. So if you could please go to the next, thank you. And so when we look at retail, we're talking about grocery stores, retail, your H&Ms, your Zara's, your Sprouts. When you look at that, it's the second largest employer in the city of LA. And I believe also across the county, there's thousands of workers. And one of the reasons this coalition came about, it was really, UFCW Local 770 really looking at how do you really, increase the standards for grocery and retail, because grocery, those jobs are good jobs, right? A lot of folks, this is people's careers. This is family sustaining jobs. And when you looked at retail, that's how it used to be. And as you know, over the years, all of that has been, as any industry that we look at, the quality of jobs have gone down. So UFCW really took this upon them as a way to raise standards for both their members, but also looking at non-union workers, right? Because you got to raise the standards for everyone. And so this is kind of their outlook, right? And so we focus on Fair Work Week. What that means is, I don't know if any of you worked in retail ever in your life. Personally, I've worked in retail when I was university, and in between jobs, basically you're on call, like doctors and nurses are. But as a retail worker, you don't have set schedules. You're just waiting for your manager to call you when they need you to come in, or if you're scheduled, you'll show up at the store and they say, we don't need you. And that really has, impact on folks' quality of life. And quality of life, because most retail workers, grocery workers are mostly women, and most of them are women of color. And you also have folks who are parents. And so this is why, it's really important when we're looking at our fellow folks here in LA County to really look how this impacts folks' quality of life, and also the communities where retail and grocery workers are coming from. Those are communities that are often left behind. And also, once you don't have stable schedules, you also don't have a stable income. And so it really impacts the community. If you can go to the next slide. So this is what the coalition came around. And so what happened is, once the pandemic hit, overnight, we basically, had to stop on that policy, but really get into a different gear, right? We saw grocery workers, retail workers, these workers being called essential workers heroes. These were the same workers where people were like, why do they need a $15 wage? And then folks really saw how essential, how essential these workers were. They gave us a lifeline, right? Like giving us access to food and our necessities. These workers, they did not have a choice to shelter at home. They did not have a choice to virtually, come in to work, as many of us who are privileged to do that. And then what happened with the coalition, we immediately went to enforcing health and safety at the workplace, right? Where, workers started calling us, our managers, we know we have to wear masks, but our managers at the store, they're not asking because there's a mask. I wanted to wear a mask. I was told by my manager, it doesn't look good. The customers may not like it. So probably about the first month of the pandemic, there was just a lot of things that we really had to deal with. We also part of the coalition have, union members, workers, and non-union workers as well. So we really went into a mode of how do we just pass policy that really protects the workers on the ground. So even simple things that UFCW led on, hand washing breaks, right? Businesses weren't going to do that unless we legislated that. If you could go to the next slide, please. Great, awesome. And so I just wanted to kind of share what are the different things that we have been doing, and that's what Rachel is going to also talk about, because the pandemic isn't over, right? With the new variants, these workers still have to, show up. So a couple of the things there that we passed was obviously City of LA and a county is hazard pay, hero pay, where workers, were justly compensated. We wish they should have been paid more higher wages throughout this pandemic, but what we were able to do is for some time in the heat of the pandemic, in the springtime, at least workers were compensated, and we did that through legislative process, to making sure folks will get just be compensated. A lot of these employers gave workers $2 raises at the beginning of the pandemic, but come like in 2 or 3 months into the pandemic, they took away the $2 hazard pay. And so we really thought this was important. The other thing that we also did is also figuring out supplement paid sick leave at the state level, here at the local level. So folks got sick. They wouldn't come to work sick if they knew that their job was going to be protected and they actually had paid time off. These are just a couple of the things that we've done. And then Rachel's going to talk to you also about how we're continuing the hazard pay. Hazard pay also just try to get some kind of compensation for these workers, right, who are continuing to work, who had to be at the job, potentially risking their lives. And unfortunately, I know UFCW7, they did lose a lot of their members, due to the COVID pandemic. And so, this has had a devastating effect. And then the other thing we also do as a coalition is we're also supporting UFCW 770 members on their workplace, also in their contract fight. So our coalition, we obviously, like any LAANE coalition, we do advocacy for policy, but we're also there at the picket line in front of stores for workers. If you could go to the next slide with the CVS. Oh, go back, yeah. So right now, CVS, they're in a contract fight. The workers there started negotiating back in June. So, CVS, their folks went there to get their vaccine shots, COVID tests, and CVS really if they want to think of themselves as a health provider, not just as a pharmacy or a corner store. That's what they project out to the public. But when it comes to their own workers, the workers there don't even have health care. A company offers a health care. It's more like a discount card. So they themselves cannot properly seek medical help when they need it, let alone their families. So for CVS workers, it's really, exposing these companies who do these, great public service announcements, how they've stepped up during the pandemic. But then when you really look how they actually treat their employees who kept their doors open, it's a day and night difference. So the CVS contract fight, they've been in negotiation since June. We're now here September 19th. The company, these are the major things that the workers want. So affordable health care, obviously better wages, and the company has not budged at all. So we're coming to a point where the coalition, we've been doing delegations to management, but we are now going to need broader support from the community. And one thing we're going to start doing is boycott actions at various CVSs to build more pressure on CVS and to let them know that the community and their customers care. And we would love to get the club involved in those actions, as well as we're moving things on social media. One of the things I do want to share, we do have our first boycott action. It'll be next Friday from 10 a.m. to 12. It'll be in West Hollywood. It's one of the flagship stores that CVS has. I would like to invite you all who can participate. We're taking caution. We have social distancing. I have N95 masks. This is where we're asking for the community to step up, because when they see community in front of their stores, that's when they care, and customers. And so I will share that information with Anne and also keep you all posted in terms of what else you could do. But next Friday, that is one of our first boycott actions. And then right now, I'm not sure, with the leadership of UFCW as well as their members, and also UFCW International, because this is a country-wide campaign. We may be calling a boycott of CVS, but for right now, we're definitely going to do action next Friday. So that's my quick gist. This is a lot of good work. So that's me condensing it. If you could go to the next slide. And so I know there's a lot I went through. So if anybody at the club, you want to get involved, or, please, what you can do is you can take your phone right now, scan that, take a picture of that QR code, and it'll link you to a sign-in sheet. So if you have any questions or you want to, get involved more, please put in your contact info there. That will be greatly appreciated. So I'm going to hold, and if you could just, I guess, keep that slide up. I'm going to hand it over to you, Rachel. You could talk about the efforts that you are leading on with the America Rescue Plan.
Thanks, Amardeep. Hi, everyone. It's good to see all of you. I feel like it's amazing. I don't think I've actually spoken with your club in the work that we've done. So it's great to meet all of you, even by Zoom. Just a quick shout out. I want to just introduce Hannah Franco, who is my colleague with the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. She is a fellow doing a program with the LACDP as a USC student. Folks, watch out for her. She is an up and coming rock star who is going to lead our party to really great things. So just want to recognize Hannah, who made the initial outreach to this club. So Amardeep did a phenomenal job of really outlining sort of 19 months of work that we as a coalition have been involved in. I'm just going to highlight one particular aspect of it because there is an action and an ask for this club. And that is around the distribution of the American Recovery Plan Act funds for essential workers. So if folks may or may not have heard of this, it's ARPA. That's the acronym that we're using. And it was signed by Congress, by President Biden. And it really is part of his broad recovery plan for cities and counties across the country as a result of COVID-19. And we're going to see a lot of good things come out of this act and future acts to get folks back working, get folks the COVID-19 protocols and safety measures that they need, and a whole host of other things that we're very excited as a union to be working with him on. And one of those pieces is the ARPA funding for essential workers. And so as Amardeep mentioned, grocery and drug retail workers were deemed essential on day one of the pandemic. Now, on one level, that's a phenomenal thing to be recognized as Amardeep said, these are low-income workers. These are folks who make barely above minimum wage. And for many years, they were disregarded as service workers who, we didn't understand sort of the value that they brought to to our communities until COVID-19. But being deemed essential has a cost to it, which is that these were folks that did not get to work remotely, who did not get to seek unemployment. And what we learned through this process is that had they worked remotely, had they gone on unemployment, they actually would have made more money. But instead, they were forced to work, and many of them worked 2 jobs. So they lost their second job. All of the weight of the world and their family fell on them to make ends meet. And they did not have the kind of training that other essential workers or workers who are used to being on the front lines of traumatic situations, doctors, nurses, firefighters, police officers, folks who go through years of programming and training to learn how to deal with trauma, who learn how to deal with life and death situations. Grocery workers, drug retail workers never had that training of before working into a store. And so when March 2020 hit and everything closed and everybody was panic shopping, companies, as Amardeep mentioned, were telling workers, don't put on a mask, that scares people. So literally workers had no masks, there was no social distancing, there was no plastic covering, and infection rates went through the roof. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, the companies recognized, gosh, we got to incentivize people to come to work for us. Like, this is not a safe situation. So they gave this $2 increase. Then around Memorial Day weekend, they pulled it back and they said, oh, we're past the hazard. Well, we know now the hazard zone just started. And it got worse in the fall and the winter. And so now, 19 months later, we are looking at, just in our membership alone, over 6,000 workers getting infected with COVID-19. Over 15 members have passed away. And the numbers are increasing every day because of the Delta variant, because of the lack of folks wearing masks, because of anti-vaxxer movements. And these are plaguing our stores right now. And as Amardeep mentioned, CVS workers, Rite Aid workers, they're giving the vaccine in these stores. So they are acting as basically healthcare workers without the same levels of protections that when you go into, say, a Kaiser hospital, somebody asks you, what are your symptoms? Are you masked? Have you been vaccinated? All these things. When people go into grocery stores, when they go into drug retail, none of those things happen. And so what the ARPA Act is about recognizing the service of these workers. Over the past year, we were able to move 30 cities and counties throughout the state of California and Washington to provide a very minimal amount of hazard pay. It was about a $5 increase for about 120 days. And this was a really good faith effort by multiple cities and counties to say, we respect the work that we've done. We thank you for your service. And we want you to be able to make ends meet. We want you to be able to put groceries on your table. We want you to pay for healthcare and for co-pays and for childcare and for all the goods and services that we need to survive this pandemic. And then when the economy reopened, cities like Oxnard and Calabasas said, you know what, we have these dollars that we can use and give them directly to essential workers in our communities. So that's really what we're looking to do here. And that's what we're asking the club for your support on. Cities like Inglewood and Gardena and multiple cities throughout LA County and in this region in particular are in the process of discussing where to allocate those funds. So what are we talking about? Not that much money and not that many workers. But if you're making a barely above minimum wage and you get $1,000 grant check, that is a big difference in your life and the life of your family. And that's what the city of Oxnard did. They allocated $1,000 for each worker who worked in grocery or drug retail during the year of 2020 for 3 months. And so these are the kind of policies that we can implement locally right now that will make a huge difference in the lives of workers. We know that they spend locally. We know that they're not going to hoard the wealth, that this is money well spent. And cities and counties need to spend this. There's a whole process of auditing that's going to happen, and they can only use these dollars for certain actions, for certain funds. So essential workers are part of that. So we hope your club will endorse this, will sign on. We've sent a draft letter that can be reviewed and edited as you see fit. And if there is support and approval to submit that to cities like Inglewood that are currently in this review process. And with that, I'll stop if there's any questions or comments.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, we did receive your letter. I talked to Kathy, our president, and so it's too hard to vote here in a Zoom. So what we're going to do is vote on it at our board meeting tomorrow. So it was addressed to Inglewood, and you just mentioned Gardena. So is it also, is it going to be a generic letter that we're adding our name to, or is it to the city of Inglewood?
Yeah, so it's just an outline of a letter that can be submitted to any city. Maybe a couple details change, but really it's a general outline of a letter that can be submitted to whatever city.
So you're asking for the club to support just that the American Recovery Plan Act actually provides funds for these retail workers.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for, and Hannah, I am so sorry. Thank you, Rachel, for introducing Hannah Franco, but Hannah Franco is from LACDP. Maybe you want to show her highlight her here, Reggie? Because she is the one that brought Rachel to my attention. There she is. All right. Did you want to add anything, Hannah?
No, I'm here Rachel and I have been working together, and I'm here to watch her presentation so that later on I can pop in another club's Zooms and do the same thing. So
okay,
here to listen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Okay, any other questions for Rachel, Amardeep, or Hannah? Okay,